All right, what's up, everyone? Back here with another SmackDown reaction show this week. Running a few minutes late this week. I told you guys sometimes I have to catch up on SmackDown, and I was running about 20 minutes behind tonight from the actual live show. So I finally caught up, and I figured we'd do a quick reaction video here on Wrestling Reaction, as we usually do for each show, Monday and Fridays for Raw and SmackDown. We didn't get to do Raw this week, but I told you guys we do SmackDown, and so even a few minutes late, we're going to do that. And looks like, I don't know if you guys saw, we'll talk about SmackDown, of course, and get your thoughts on what happened on the show, but it does seem like there were also some releases in WWE that I just saw a few minutes ago, which, is something that certainly happens. We know in this landscape. So what's up, Juan? Good to see you as always. Yeah, I know this is Friday nights are a little bit easier for me to do these reaction shows than it is on Mondays. So even though we're about 25 minutes late, that's okay. We were going to get to it. So yeah, good to see you here, Juan. Hope things are doing well. And yeah, always appreciate your support. Alexander, you as well. Thanks for watching. And again, guys, for jumping in, we'll let some people hop on in here for the first time. We just do this as a reaction show. I don't go segment by segment, all of that as a full review. We just kind of hang out and talk whatever happened. So that's what this is. And obviously, you don't have to just keep this to SmackDown. We can talk about other things as well in WWE that you'd like. So yeah, what about this, Juan? I mean, that attack on Kevin Owens. If anyone was wondering if we're in the PG era anymore, that was quite a nasty cut for old Kevin Owens there from the attack from Tama Tonga. And yeah, I think Solo is making his presence felt. And I know we had that debate about, is Solo the tribal chief, or how is this thing working? I feel like for now they can sort of present him as, maybe he's playing that role for now while there's no Rock, while there's no Roman. We know it's not Roman, right? But yeah, I think that it's very clear at this point that they have a way to where they can sort of position Solo in that slot. Now, you even heard Heyman say tonight, right? He's like, this will be yours one day, but it's not yet. And of course, Solo was not going to take too kindly to that, because we know he feels like it's already his. But my prediction would still be that he's following orders from The Rock. And I think maybe that's what gets us to that Rock Roman Reigns match, whenever that happens, which maybe next year, maybe not. But yeah, it seems like that's probably still the direction they would go in. And I'm curious, again, how they introduce Jacob Fatu to the mix, because they're really pushing like that savage type nature, which I love, because if you think about it, those three guys, like, you made Tama Tonga just feel on Solo's level tonight with the kind of attack that he had on Owens. Like, those could be three just ruthless guys, right? And you put them up against Roman and the Usos, that could be pretty awesome. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, hey, great point here, Chris. I was going to bring this up. So if you did watch, the person you see in the background, like on one of the trucks, that was Roman, right? So I thought that was a nice little touch. Who was the other person? I feel like there was someone else. I'd have to go back and look at it. But as I was watching, I'm like, there's that truck again. We know they don't just place those anywhere. Although this one was not perfectly lit like the last one with Cena and Austin. But this one was there. It was noteworthy that you had Roman, and I don't know if it was Bianca Belair or someone else was on there. But yeah, I think they always love playing around with that kind of stuff. But there was a difference with this one and the other one. So yeah, so it's going to be interesting. So yeah, I agree, Juan. It's like, hey, new era. Give me the profanity. Give me the attitude era stuff with the blood and these kind of attacks, and that's pretty good. I mean, the way they set it up, it's like Solo's looking for Kevin Owens. Paul Heyman could not deliver. Turns out we know exactly where Kevin Owens was. It was Tama Tonga who found him. So yeah, that was really good stuff. And I like that they're really establishing that these guys they don't give a damn about anything. Like, they are just ruthless, and they will do anything that it takes. And I really like that, because if they bring in Jacob Fatu to join those two guys, he can be the same, right? When you just think about what he can do. And so I think this was a lot better than I thought that maybe they would be in after the post Roman and Rock sort of era here after WrestleMania. I was like, I don't know what they were going to do, but this direction over the past couple weeks, I really like it. I think that they're gearing up for something big, as you guys know I've talked about in other videos. So yeah, they're gearing up for something a lot of fun to see what happens there. So yeah, Norman got two former Bullet Club members going at it. So yeah, big match coming up. Backlash France, which they keep adding the France on there, so they really want to establish that these location type events. But yeah, it's Cody and AJ, just like we expected. I mean, like I said, I didn't think Cody and LA Knight would make a lot of sense because you didn't want to put LA Knight in that position just to lose. So AJ gets his rematch with LA Knight, gets his win, so that way those two kind of split, so you can always go back to that at some point. And I mean, AJ won. Well, they really pointed out the poke in the eyes or whatever. So yeah, they can always go back to that match again, have a third match between the two. But yeah, for now, it gives Cody a really good challenger, and I think having the history helps because you need a way to build that up a little bit, right? So you got to make somebody believable for Cody. I know we all have a really good idea of AJ Styles probably not going to win that match, but it's all in how they tell the story and, just kind of see how they do this story-wise, because I think that's going to be the thing that sells the match, because it's not really going to be sold on the fact that people actually think that AJ is going to win, but they have to find a way to make us at least have that tiny little doubt, maybe. So not always easy to do. But, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know exactly why. I was thinking of this as they were doing this angle, but I'm like, why was Solo looking for Kevin Owens? I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was obviously there's history there, going back to, when Sami and KO were teaming up and they won the WrestleMania main event last year and won the tag titles. But, that wasn't directly involved with Solo. But, too, and I think about something else that popped in my mind was just the draft itself, right? Who's going to come over and be the possible person who can help KO now? And that's where, again, we talk about, you guys know in the last couple of videos, like Jay is really someone that I am fascinated by because I'm curious, like, what do they do with Jay? Does he come over now after the draft? We know he's going to face Damian Priest for the championship. I just don't see Jay winning, the world title. So does he come over after that? And that's maybe a way that you get him slotted back in there to where he's one that has to sort of join KO and all that. So I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. So for sure, yeah. Hey, the We Want Roman chants were there. How about that? So that, like I said, guys, that's where I mean, now that they are leaning fully into this. They've got people doing exactly what they want them to do. I saw some people questioning, were they piping in the We Want Roman chants? You never know with WWE, but there were some people chanting We Want Roman. And Solo was getting pissed off about it and all that, and that was perfect. I mean, like we said, too, Solo's got to grow into this role. Like, he is going to be the main figure now every single week, it seems like, him and Heyman, even with Tama Tonga there and other people that we expect to be added to the mix. But, yeah, Solo's like your main player right now. And so him getting the We Want Roman chants as Heyman's talking, that's what you want. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're already spinning it. Yep, Mike, they're already spinning it. Like, this is what they want you to do, and I think this is for the best. I mean, it was one of those things where Roman was in that role for so long. Once he starts to go away, like, people will miss him. And I think the longer he's away, the longer they will miss him, and that pop gets even bigger when he does finally return. And you guys know what I think. I think he's going to return and align with the Usos to go up against these other three, and just have this big, huge blow-off match at some point. And so I think they're already clearly pushing us in that direction, especially tonight when you had those chants. People definitely want Roman. Yeah, Greg, for sure. Heyman's doing a great job too. Like, even the backstage thing, or I guess is the parking lot with Nick Aldis. Like, I thought that was an interesting exchange because Aldis, I mean, you can tell Heyman's playing the role of like, I had nothing to do with this, but Aldis isn't buying it. He's like, okay, it's Heyman. I'm going to trust Paul Heyman and all this. But I thought that was really good too because Heyman is like, he's trapped. If you think about it, like, he is completely trapped here because what does he do, right? He knows that, and Heyman's relaying this to Roman, in the storyline, right? There's no doubt that Heyman's relaying everything that's going on to Roman because he talks to him all the time. We know that, but it's just he's still there, and he has to be with Solo, and he has to kind of continue to be around these guys, which, again, too, that's perfect because if Heyman's not there, that's when you really start to wonder, okay, how do Solo and Tama Tonga sort of survive in this role that they're put in, like, as the main guys? So I think that's what's interesting too, is like Heyman has to be there each week because he's great to play off of this now, knowing that he understands that Solo's not following the orders of Roman Reigns, and yet he's trapped because Solo kind of has him doing what he wants him to do as part of the bloodline, all that. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, I agree, Chris. Like, I think Solo these past couple weeks he's done a really good job because like I said, he's got to grow into this role. He's not going to, the presence isn't going to be like Roman right away or anything, and he may never get there, right? But I think you got to give him time to at least try to work this this new approach that they're doing, right? And so far so good, I think, because he doesn't need to be someone that talks all the time. That's why Heyman's there. Like I just said, I mean, Heyman needs to be there to play off of these guys and just have them really just beat the hell out of everybody. I mean, that's the way these guys are going to get over with Solo and Tama Tonga, and like we said, if our prediction is true with Jacob Fatu, like, yeah, I mean, that's how they do it. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So Calvin brings up a good point here. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? You could draft over both Jay and Sami, and that was my first thought is Sami. I'm like, well, Sami's the Intercontinental Champion. He's got unfinished business with Gable, but if you, I don't know, you finish that business, or maybe both of them come over, but you could finish that business at Backlash, perhaps, although, I don't know, I feel like that's a feud that has a little bit longer to work with, but I've got to think Jay's one of those pieces for sure that comes back to SmackDown, because I feel like you guys saw too when the video I did on him, like Jay is also kind of trapped. He's in the Heyman role, and I think Jay is sort of trapped where he knows he cannot get out of this bloodline stuff now that they've attacked Jimmy, and so then he gets drafted to SmackDown where now he really can't get out of it, right? Like now he's really sucked all the way back in, and I think that would be great to kind of see what Jay's reaction would be to that, knowing what's happened before that. So. Yeah, so we're gonna find out. But yeah, a good point here too. Like Greg, I think Solo coming to the arena without Heyman. Yeah, like Heyman is just there waiting. Heyman is not actively part of anything, right? And that's where things are gonna get more kind of suspenseful, is because Heyman is not. He knows he's kind of left in the dark here, and I think when you start to get Heyman maybe starting to figure some things out, someone said it earlier. Maybe that's when you have Solo just takes out Heyman at some point, right? And then from there, Roman can not only avenge maybe the Usos, but he has to avenge the Wise Man, and you get the band back together with the originals at some point down the road, whether that's months from now or whatever. But yeah, I think that's definitely the position we're headed in. Yeah, people brought up the War Games match before, right? Adrian, I mean, I think people have brought that up. Like, how do they get to the War Games match? That would be, it's perfect. If they're going to keep this savagery up, that's what Wade Barrett kept calling it. On commentary, like they're really pushing the savage nature of this version of the bloodline, and so I really like that for sure. So that's a great, yeah, to tie in the college basketball element. That's right, Coach Cal's fault for the bloodline breaking up. So Big Blue Nation may weigh in on that, even though it may be a different crowd. But yeah, you guys know I'm into that. So. Yeah, Jimmy, is this right? So on Jimmy, is this? I've not kept up. I've kind of been out of the loop the past couple of days. I've been doing some other things, but I think there's a way to, once everybody is good to go, right? Once everybody's ready and good to have this big match. Like I think SummerSlam potentially is the destination. Maybe that's a little too early. Maybe they can hold it off to Survivor Series. Because Roman's doing the movie stuff too. I'm sure you guys saw. Like they had saw the photos on Twitter and stuff. Roman's filming something right now, I think. So he's not going to be back anytime soon. And we know like Rock's not going to factor into this thing till way down the road, probably, maybe even not until next year at this time. So yeah, they've got a long way to go. Like that's what I don't want to say worries me, but this thing has to drag out for a little while. And I think it's just how do they keep it interesting. But I think tonight was a good point on that because you have people like Kevin Owens you can play off of. If Jay comes back into the mix, if Sami comes back into the mix, and there are other people as well you can play off of, right, that are still there. That they can go different directions with other guys too. Whether Orton could be in that. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's the good thing is like the bloodline has interacted and built up enemies, like so many enemies over the years that they can have people they can sort of hold over until they get to the big ones. And I think that's probably what they're trying to do now with the Owens thing. Because like we know Owens is going to be connected to him now for a while, for however long they need to get there. So I would assume we're getting Kevin Owens and Tama Tonga at some point. I mean, it seems like that would be the obvious singles match, and then you can do the tag matches if you have Solo team up, with Tama Tonga, and like we said, maybe Jay comes over, Sami comes over, whatever. So yeah, like I think that's clearly what they're going to have to do for a little while. So yeah, we'll find out what happens. we're getting the blend of like my worlds here. We got the basketball and the the other one here. So we'll try to blend those two together whenever we can. But it doesn't always apply for the Arkansas fans here. But again, guys, appreciate you hopping in. Hit that subscribe button if you hadn't already. Hit the like button. We try to do this every Monday and Fridays after Raw and SmackDown. Some weeks, will be easier than others. Some weeks we do it the next day. But you can also check out all the videos we have on the channel too here. Having a lot of fun with this in the post-WrestleMania era now. I know it's kind of a lull for some people where you don't have the same kind of excitement and the same kind of, intensity that you had on the road to WrestleMania, but still, I think there's some interesting stuff in the works here, especially on SmackDown with the Bloodline. We know we're getting Cody and AJ. Tiffany Stratton, you guys know I'm very high on Tiffany Stratton. She interferes in the main events, hit the prettiest moonsault on both. Thought that was pretty good. And so I think they're clearly positioning her. I don't think she's going to win the title, but doesn't it seem like they're clearly setting up the triple threat with those three? Because Naomi didn't get a chance to win the title. Bayley's still the champion. Stratton interferes. You would think they're doing the three-way at Backlash. I mean, that would be my guess after what they did tonight. So, I don't know. We're going to get a Tiffany Stratton championship run at some point. It's probably too early, but I'm curious to see how they do this with her because, again, they wouldn't put her in the main event slot tonight. Like, she's the final image on SmackDown is her standing over, the champions there, or standing over Bayley and Naomi. So, that's something else that's there. You also saw Jade and Bianca. They're clearly taking aim at those tag team championships for Asuka and Kairi Sane. So that's one we kind of felt like for a while now they were going to get to. And, yeah, they're clearly heading into that direction for sure. So, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even bring up the obvious one earlier with Orton. Like, he could very well be the easy one that comes to help out Owens because he has history, too, with the Bloodline. And so you can have Orton added to the mix. That Randy solo match, like that was one that we're always wondering, could that be like a WrestleMania type match? It didn't happen, but that's something else where you could easily put Orton back in the mix. And you guys know, I hope they're saving Orton to get to that Cody match at some point in the future. Maybe it's a while from now, but I think before Orton retires, you want to do the Cody and Orton, storyline with Orton as the heel, I'm sure. And so, yeah, I think they want to get to that at some point, but it's way too soon for that so far. So, was there an Uncle Howdy clue tonight? Yes, there was. I only spotted one of them. You guys can tell me if there was more, but whenever Triple H made his entrance to introduce the new tag team titles, which you guys tell me what you thought about those. I thought these were better than the ones they introduced on Raw. They were a little more of that vintage feel to like the old school titles. But, yeah, they did it. The screen did the glitching or whatever. I don't remember if there was a QR code or not, but, yeah, it happened during Triple H's entrance. So if you want to go back and watch it, it's right there. I think as he's almost made his way to the ring, that was where it happened. So, so they did do that, and as I did, in a video yesterday, I'm starting to see how all this may come together for old Uncle Howdy here, and how he makes his return. Like, there's a lot of interesting things they could do, which you guys know. I did the video, like Eric Rowan seems to be out there potentially making his return. I don't know what Matt Hardy's up to. I know he keeps teasing the stuff on Twitter, although some people say maybe he's heading back to TNA. But yeah, like there's and then Strowman. I mean, Strowman's still out with an injury, and when do they bring him back? So I mentioned it. Like, if they're gonna bring Bo Dallas, Taylor Rotunda, Uncle Howdy, whatever you want to call him, they're gonna bring him back. Like they have to feel pretty confident that what they're doing will serve the Bray Wyatt legacy very well, or otherwise they wouldn't do it. So I think we can at least have a little confidence in that whatever they are going to do here, it'll be worth kind of the wait and seeing. It's not going to be the same, as I've said before. It's just not. You can't replicate exactly that because, you don't have Bray Wyatt to add to the mix, but you certainly, I think that it's his brother, and he's going to come back and try to do this justice in terms of, how they pull this off. So I would have a little bit more confidence in that just because it's not just some random person trying to pay tribute to Bray Wyatt, right? Like, it's his brother, and there's connections there. And again, all the other people who've been connected to this little world that he built over the years, like, there's plenty you can do with that. So we'll see. We'll see how it happens. But, I guess Brock is still there too. So, we've talked about Brock before. I mean, he's going to come back at some point. I think I feel a lot more confident about that than I did certainly when everything started with the whole Vince McMahon stuff. But I still don't know exactly when Brock comes back. Still feels like that's probably, if they bring him back, to me, it's like that's got to be a SummerSlam, WrestleMania type scenario versus the others. But as I always say too, now it's like they're doing so many of these stadium shows that aren't like the big four inside the United States. So they're doing them outside. Like we talked about the Berlin show. Obviously France coming up for Backlash. And so all those different shows, like those are ones that have to sell tickets, right? And so, maybe getting a Brock there. And Saudi Arabia is coming up too. So I don't know. There's a lot of potential options if they do decide to bring him back, which I think is probably more likely now than it was before. But still, just no way of knowing, because he's not necessarily factoring anything right now. So that seems to be the case. Yeah, hey, maybe there you go. That's a great point. Like I didn't think about that, but yeah, maybe Brock can help Heyman. Heyman may need an ally here, and so that's the thing too, right? Like Heyman doesn't have a lot of allies because he's just wronged so many people on these rosters over the years by being with Roman in other situations as well. And so, I guess if CM Punk was healthy, like maybe Punk could help him. Like he would be one of the few that could do this, but yeah, like Heyman doesn't have a lot of people who like him. I think that's the best way to put it, right? So given what he's done to Roman Reigns' adversaries, the Bloodlines, like all the people that have opposed him, not just with the Bloodline, but, former with Lesnar and such. So yeah, Heyman's not made a lot of friends. So he's not going to have a lot of people come to his rescue, I don't think, there. So also tonight on SmackDown, we got number one contenders for the tag team titles. We mentioned those a minute ago. I really like the new brand for the tag titles. The Street Profits, who I'm glad won because I think they need something here. It felt like the six-man feud or however many people were involved between Bobby Lashley's group and the Final Testament. It felt like that dragged on for months. Got nothing against any of those guys, but man, I was ready to see the Street Profits do something else. And I'm glad that they're getting a shot at the titles. Don't know if they'll win them, but I've always been a huge fan of these guys. I think they, obviously what they were doing with the New Day, like however many years ago that was, having the Usos, I mean, they were having good matches. And I think that they kind of need to get back to being one of the forefront teams in the tag team division because I think they're really good. And we'll see if this maybe pushes them a little further towards that. But yeah, I think they've needed something interesting to sort of get into for a while now. But we'll see. All right, anything else? What else you guys got coming out of SmackDown tonight? Again, we can talk about other stuff as well. Those were kind of the main things I thought on SmackDown. Santos Escobar beat Carlito, which I don't know. I'm still just kind of with the LWO, and I'm still just, let's see what happens with this. I feel like that's another one where these guys have been feuding for so long now that, we've talked about kind of the teases they've done there with maybe Carlito turns. And so I don't know, but we'll maybe after the draft, freshen things up a little bit on the SmackDown mid-card front, I think would not be the worst thing in the world, for sure. So that's why I'm glad the draft starts next week. So, yeah, I'm curious to know what you guys think, too, about the draft. Like, who do you want to see come over? We've talked about the possibility with a Jay, Sami, guys like that, but who are some other guys? Do you think, one thing I thought about, like, what if LA Knight goes to Raw? Because he comes out the loser in this match against Styles. I don't really know what else there is for him to do on SmackDown right now unless they put him in a role with, like, Logan Paul. That would be the only, I think a lot of people thought they'd get to LA Knight versus Logan Paul for the U.S. title earlier than this. Some people thought that maybe the WrestleMania match several months out, but it just didn't happen. And, of course, he got Styles to work with. But I don't think it'd be the worst thing for LA Knight to go to Raw to sort of give him some fresh feuds to kind of get into. But they may just keep him on SmackDown, and we get to that eventually. But again, so you can bring people over from Raw that gives him some fresh opponents as well. So I think there's options there. But he's someone I'm intrigued to see if they move him. Because I don't think it'd be the worst thing if they did. And there's some other people I've started to look at to try to figure out, okay, are they going to move this person? I mean, Jay feels like to me the one that I'm pretty confident is moving. But beyond that, I mean, it's the draft. You just never know, right? So more of a fan of Raw or SmackDown. Right now, I think I'm more of a fan of Raw. But I don't know. Like I think the Raw mid-card is better. I think the SmackDown, I mean, I don't know. Like, the Drew stuff's good on Raw, Cody stuff, but, like, that's the thing, right, is the draft. How about I answer it after the draft? I'll tell you my answer, but I feel like sometimes the SmackDown mid-card to lower card, like, it can be a drag, and I think you've had some of these feuds that have just extended for so long because they don't have the depth. It's a 2-hour show versus a 3-hour show, but I think Raw's been really good for a while. And so I think that's something I would say. I'm probably more of an overall fan of Raw, even though the Bloodline storyline is probably still the thing I'm most interested in. especially like with Punk out and you don't have Punk and McIntyre every single week. That would probably be one of the top things. But yeah, I'd say overall as a whole, Raw, but the Bloodline to me is still probably the top story that has my interest. So yeah, I agree. Good to see you back here, by the way. And yeah, it's the Savage version. That's how they're coining the phrase. Like they're making it very clear. Like this is your sort of rogue. I don't know. Like what they are not holding anything back. So just go after everyone. And yeah, right. Taking back revenge. That's a good way to put it. Like that's what I said earlier. Like they're going after all the people that have somehow been involved at some point. That's why I was trying to connect the dots on Owens. I'm like, well, that would make sense. He was the one that took the tag titles away from the group last year. And even though it was the Usos, who are not really in the group now, I mean, you could certainly see Solo looking back and saying, no, we got to get that guy back. And of course, he was still part of stuff with Roman too. Yeah, like I think they are going to take aim at everyone. That's probably a good call on that one. And especially, we'll see if anybody comes over in the draft to where they're kind of factored into the mix too, kind of one of those former rivals or whatever. Like we said, anyone other than Jay, you could put into that role. So, yeah, I think this is probably a good call on this. Orton he's not even been on the past couple weeks, has he? Of course, Logan Paul had the promo last week, I think, and he was still kind of adding Orton in there with him. He was sort of running down, taunting Orton a bit there. But yeah, I assume Orton's probably, he worked a pretty consistent schedule since he came back at Survivor Series. So I wonder if this is just sort of that break that, again, the guy he still can't be 100%, like given the injury in the back and everything. So yeah, I think Orton's probably got to step up for Owens. And that's a good point. Like maybe they're just holding Orton out for that reason, to sort of make you not forget about him, but kind of forget about him. Like, just sort of make you forget that he's there. And then all of a sudden, when you need someone to really come back and avenge Kevin Owens, like Orton's there, you get the big pop comes out of it and all that. So, yeah, I think that could certainly happen. That's a good point here, I think. So, yeah, I agree. I think they have to mix it up. Like, you need some new feuds. You need some fresh stuff. And that's something I will say. I think Triple H, other than WrestleMania season, which I'm willing to give them a pass on that because it's WrestleMania season, you just do anything you can to get the best product you can put out there. If you have to put some people on Raw and SmackDown that aren't actually on the brand, I don't care, to be honest. Like, I really don't care. I feel like they should put the rule in place from the Rumble on. Let anybody do whatever they want. Give us the best WrestleMania you can. I don't care about the brands, whatever. I'm half joking there. But other than that, I think Triple H did a good job of kind of keeping people where they needed to be. And if they did go to another brand, if they appeared on another show, they at least gave you a reason for it, right? They didn't just say, oh, there he is. In case you forgot, he's not on this brand. So I think he's done a good job of that. And that's why I think they'll get fresh feuds out of this, because at least he does a much better job of sticking to the brand split, even though, like I said, outside of WrestleMania season, I think it does still way better than Vince ever did. What was the rule they had? Was it the wild card rule? What was that stupid thing they came up with? I'm sorry, I thought that was terrible. Whatever it was, it's only just like once a year or 5 times a year people get to go over. I just thought that was ridiculous. Like, come on, just give me a reason they're there. I don't need this wild card business and all that. Just give me a reason they're there. That's good enough for me. So, yeah, it was a good match until, Tiffany got involved, and we should have known. I mean, they set it up earlier. I don't remember. One of the interviews, somebody brought up Tiffany, and maybe it was Naomi brought her up, and I was like, there you go. She's going to have to show up at some point. And so she did come out. So I think they do the triple threat. That's got to be the direction they're heading in, because Naomi didn't lose, and, Bayley didn't win either. So she has a reason to kind of have that rematch. But Tiffany wants her shot, and so surely they worked at the triple threat. So, Uncle Howdy, I know you followed up and said Backlash. I mean, they're still doing this stuff. I think you could do it at Backlash. Yeah, I'm curious because, I feel like it's one of those, maybe it's a draft thing, right? Like which Backlash comes right after the draft, but yeah, I'll pull this one up to get the right one. Yeah, I think it's probably sooner rather than later, because I feel like all these codes and everything that's going on, when did they start? You guys are probably better than I am at remembering when they started, but was it before WrestleMania? I think it had to be before WrestleMania, right? But it was actually, so the Bray Wyatt documentary, you guys know I reviewed that. I told you, at the end of that, if you haven't watched it, at the end, go past the credits and everything. That's the first big tease they give you. But I think even then, like, stuff was already maybe getting a couple of those things that would pop on the screen. Of course, you had the one on Raw. So I feel like I don't remember how long the Bray Wyatt one was whenever he did that the first time around. I don't remember how long that was before he actually returned, but I would think it's got to be sooner rather than later with this. And like I said, I feel like a lot of that, and you just talked about the Eric Rowan thing, telling promotions that he couldn't work for him because new contractual obligations. So like if they're signing these people up, someone like him, then hey, and again, assume Braun Strowman's almost ready to come back. Strowman's been out a while, right? So I would assume he's getting closer and closer to returning. So if they decide to bring all these guys together, which I would have to think is the way they do it, I think just bringing back Uncle Howdy on his own, I don't know if that's the way that you do it, but hey, they've got options, I guess. So yeah, I would say sooner rather than later. Maybe Backlash, but I'm curious to see what happens there. Or maybe they do it on a TV show too, because that would be a good way to sort of add a little bit of that buzz coming out of one of your TV shows, because Backlash will always be a pretty full show with a lot of stuff probably coming out of it. So we'll find out on that. But okay, that's an interesting thought. Put Judgment Day over on SmackDown. Let them go against the Bloodline. Like, I feel like Judgment Day is now to that point. And look, here's the thing with Judgment Day, right? Who knows what they had planned for them if Rhea Ripley doesn't get injured? And I think that's where I'm curious to see what they do with them now, because I think the Rhea Ripley injury certainly plays into some things, which we talked about after Raw. They're already teasing they are going to get to that Damian Priest versus Finn Balor match for the title at some point. Like, that was pretty much teased the first time we saw those guys alone together on Raw. After they did the little group thing with Rhea Ripley and all that, but they kind of left it where everybody else walked off. It was just Priest, it was just Balor. And so I think they wanted to definitely tell you. And of course we saw too, like, Judgment Day went on their own, I guess you could say. Priest looked unhappy with them. So I think they're going to work to that match. But I think that we'll see. Like, do they move Judgment Day? I feel like Judgment Day is such a staple of Raw right now, especially with Priest with the title. But yeah, and two, I guess it's part of like the draft rules. Like, who do you draft a group? Do you draft like that? I think the draft rules have always been a little complicated too. Exactly how they draft teams. You draft 1, 2, 3. I think Raw's always had an extra pick to SmackDown just because it's a longer show. But I don't know exactly what they do there. Who do I think Uncle Howdy's first target will be? That's a good question. You guys give me your thoughts on this. So Squad Father's even asking here. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to come up with this. This kind of ties into the previous question. Like, this is sort of coming into like, what do they do with this? Because I said, and I listen, it's not my original thought, but as I'm looking on Twitter and I'm seeing people come up with all these theories, like the Wyatt 6 thing makes sense because you can get to 6 pretty easily. Uncle Howdy, Eric Rowan, Braun Strowman, Matt Hardy, although I don't know if the Matt Hardy one's realistic. I'm just telling you that I'm seeing people throwing theories out there. So, Alexa Bliss could be out there, although she was on maternity leave, wasn't she? I don't know if she's ready to come back. I don't keep up with this kind of stuff with that. But, and then, you could get there with that. And people were even mentioning, like, you could add someone else to the mix, like a Nikki Cross or someone like that. So, I don't know, because I don't. My issue with this is, like, I don't think you can just bring Uncle Howdy back by himself. I think you have to bring back kind of a unit, right? And you have to bring, it's like a family. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Like, you're building off of the Wyatt family, and I feel like you have to sort of present not a new family in the same way, because then it's just going to be compared to the old family, and you're never going to be able to live up to those expectations. But I don't know. It's a great question, because I just have not thought that far out in terms of how do they do this. And again, it's probably me also. I need to follow the QR codes a little bit more. Where I know the one they did the last time on Raw, like, I didn't end up pulling up the visual, but it was, I don't remember exactly what people were talking about that it meant on Twitter. But yeah, like, it's hard to know because they've kept this pretty straightforward. Like, it's the same stuff that we saw when Bray Wyatt came back, the last time. And I don't know who he's going to target. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. But I mean, Judgment Day seems like that would be an interesting one, right? Like, you think about just kind of what they're doing is, but again, then you'd probably have to put somebody in a title match against Damian Priest. I don't think Uncle Howdy's competing for the world title. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting possibilities. And I think it goes back to the question too earlier about the timing. Like, when do they bring this whole thing into effect? Because, if it is right after the draft, if it's right after the pay-per-view or PLE, sorry, I'm old school. I always still call them pay-per-views. But, who do you put them against? So, I'll make that a priority coming up this next week, where I'll try to put together some videos with some more in-depth thoughts on what in the world we're going to get from Uncle Howdy, because it could be anything at this point, and I wouldn't be shocked. Like, there's just so many things they could do. So, because I wish they would just tell me. Are you going to do one person, or are you going to have a whole group? If you're going to have the whole group, I can figure that out. But if it's just going to be Uncle Howdy, I don't know what he's going to do. So, yeah, I like it. But, all right, Chris, you're going with your prediction. I did do a little YouTube short on that. What was it, yesterday or today maybe? I can't keep up anymore. New champ, new world women's champion, Nia Jax. I mean, I feel like that's not a bad choice, right? I still think at some point that belt's got to get on Liv Morgan, because when Rhea comes back, which it seems like, unfortunately, that's months down the road now, she's got to win it from Liv, because I think you set up the whole thing there, right? So they could certainly always go ahead and put it on Nia Jax. I guess the question is how do they get it to Liv eventually? Because I do think that's the match that would sell the most in terms of the story. Liv's revenge tour versus Rhea's revenge tour, and it's terrible, but like they both happen the same way, right? Like Rhea injures Liv injures Rhea. This is just like, it'd be perfect if this was just straight real fighting. Like, I mean, it's exactly what you want. So yeah, I don't know if they put the belt on Liv just yet, but I think a lot of that is really going to depend on how long do they expect Rhea to be out, and I still don't know the time frame on that. I don't think it's been announced yet. So like we said, it was all a matter of she going to have surgery and all this. Was it the AC joint, collarbone, something like that? And so that's a tricky one to know exactly when she'll be back. And two, that's part of like her offense, and I think that's the hard part. Is, I mean, she's picking people up, and it's all about her strength. And if she can't do that, if she's got some kind of injury that's to do with her shoulder and AC joint and stuff, so. Yeah, but I can see Nia winning the title. I mean, they haven't announced the actual match yet, have they? They just said they'll crown a new women's champion. Like, they haven't announced any details as far as I know. I may have missed it, but we've got to assume Nia and Liv are going to be part of that for sure. Or they could go the Chelsea Green route. Chelsea lucks her way into the championship. I don't think that's the route they go, but you never know. So, yeah, Triple H loves the factions. And I think, yeah, the Bray thing was always interesting, which if you did watch the documentary, I would highly recommend for anyone who did not. If you're watching this, but I mean, it kind of goes into the creativity aspect of it. And Triple H even said himself, right? It's like it wasn't always easy working with Bray Wyatt, because you have a guy who is so into the vision of what he wants to do, and how you have to try to figure out how to do that within the confines of professional wrestling and within WWE. And it wasn't always the easiest thing to make those two things connect, because look, as anyone knows, like if you're a creative person, if you're you come up with something, like you're an artist or whatever, right? I mean, that's yours. Like, you create something and you know what you want out of it, because it's coming from, your mind, and it's your vision for how you want this to look and everything. And if you got a bunch of other hands kind of trying to say, well, it needs to be this, it needs to be that, that can get frustrating. And so I think that's where, like I said, I feel like for Triple H, like he's going to have input on this, but I feel like it's going to be working hand in hand with Bo Dallas, Taylor Rotunda. Like, he's going to have to work hand in hand with them, and this vision is going to have to come together to give them something exactly that they want. But I do think, like you said, Triple H loves factions so much, it does make sense that they would come back and make this like a faction type deal, because pretty much, I mean, who is not in a faction right now? Like, I mean, I know there are obvious people that are not, but you get my point here. Like, you can look around the roster and say, yep, that person's in a faction, that person's in a faction, even if it's a little 3-man group or 3-woman group. Like you've got people, it's like Jade, Bianca, and Naomi. Like, they feel like they're part of a group, even though they're not in a true faction, but they're like, they're kind of grouped together. And, it's just, yeah, so like Triple H really enjoys that. And, I think too, the documentary, to your last point here, I feel like Bray should have been like the next Kane or Undertaker. The documentary does a good job of kind of going into that a little bit too, where, well, yeah, that's good. You're right. I mean, the whole thing, like, there were so many things going on. Like, there were a lot of characters, and yeah, I mean, again, though, that probably speaks to just this guy, and they said it, right? It was so many ideas coming out of him. And, I mean, it's just like one of those things, too, where if you are like one of those people where sometimes you're like, these ideas just got to get out, and maybe sometimes it only makes sense to you. It doesn't always make sense to everybody else. They can't necessarily connect with it the way that you see it. But, yeah, like, I think Triple H's love for factions, and they did kind of go into, maybe there were some missteps along the way for Bray Wyatt. A lot of people thought he should have beat John Cena, right? What was that, WrestleMania 30? And so there were a lot of things along the way we could probably spend an hour or more on about him. But yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with this this Uncle Howdy thing. So, all right. So Tama Tonga is going to, yeah, I think, man, if you could just imagine, like, if they do get Jacob Fatu added to the mix, I mean, this will be, like, these guys will be incredible. Like, having those three guys who are just as ruthless as they are and how they're presenting them, I mean, that just, like, that is something, because that, again, you put that type of group against a Roman and Usos group, if that's the way they go, which, again, we're just making predictions here, that would be something just to see that. And those guys could just dominate, everything in their path if you just had those three with Solo, Tama Tonga, and Jacob Fatu. So, yeah, I mean, they can carry this bloodline thing a long way. They really can. And we weren't sure about that, because I know, like, there were some dips in this story before we got to basically The Rock's return. I mean, there were some obvious dips in the story, like how Jimmy came back into the mix, like SummerSlam. That was not the greatest match in the world. You had Jimmy added in for what felt like not a great reason. And it was like, uh-oh, Bloodline might be in trouble here. But I think this is exactly what they needed. It's kind of funny, but they needed Roman to sort of go away and lose the title, because now, I've always thought that too. And that was the thing where I could understand when people get frustrated. It always felt like, and I'm not saying this was just a Vince thing, but like there were times where it felt like WWE was like, well, what are we going to do if Roman ever loses the title? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that is just as good of a story as any story you're telling right now with him in the title picture with the championship, up until they got back to Cody. Because it's like, how do what happens to the king after he loses the throne, right? It's, how is he going to find his way back? And like, that's a great story. And so I wish they would have kind of got more into that, but they didn't. And now they're telling it, which is great, because I think it gives us all these different possibilities with Tama Tonga, Jacob Fatu, Solo in this role. So, yeah, it's pretty good stuff. All right. Hey, Cody won't be champion longer than 2 months. We'll see. I mean, he's got to have another good challenger, because I don't think he's losing to AJ. But I mean, we'll find out who those challengers are going to be. You guys know we've talked about that a lot in some of these reaction videos. I don't know, like who are his next challengers? If it's after AJ, like who do we see him facing after that? Because I think that's where the draft comes in too, is not knowing exactly who's going to be on the brands. I know we're going to get to the Gunther match at some point. And my guess is probably that still happens in Berlin, but that offers a very interesting dynamic. If you put Gunther in Berlin against Cody, that's months away, but Cody's not going to be cheered there. he's not going to be the one that's getting all the cheers. So maybe that is kind of an interesting dilemma, where do they wait for that? They put the title on Gunther next? We'll find out. That's several months down the road, though. That's after SummerSlam. I think it's August 31st, something like that. So, yeah, it's several months away, but we'll find out who Cody is going to be in the title picture. I feel like you got to do Cody and Solo at some point. I mean, I feel like that's just a natural thing they've got to do, but maybe they don't. Yeah, I think we'll find out, because I feel like Cody and Solo is a natural one to get to, given the history there too. I don't know if he would defend the title against Tama Tonga or Jacob Fatu. It depends on how they continue to push those guys forward. But I feel like he's got to be one of the ones up next. I feel like for Cody, he has to be Solo somewhere along the way. So good to see you again, Bearded Dragon. Yeah, always regular here in the live streams. But yeah, Naomi got screwed. Hope Tiffy Time gets her clock clean. Yeah, Tiffy Time only cares for her time. She don't care about anybody else's time. That's for sure. But I think they're going the three-way. I think they're going the triple threat. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Because you've already had those combinations, right? Tiffany's already faced Naomi. Naomi beat her. Or they had the other match before that where Tiffany got the upper hand on her. What was that? Elimination Chamber? I don't remember exactly. But yeah, I feel like the three-way is the way you go with this next. But I'm curious how they would book that if that is the way they go. I mean, I would assume Bayley retains, but who does she pin, right? It's like, she pin Tiffany. I mean, Tiffany's not going to be the champ just yet, maybe, but I think she's getting a title run. I mean, I think she's probably getting a title run this year, the way they're pushing her so far. So maybe she's one that goes to Raw and becomes part of that picture after Backlash. That's another possibility to think about. So, yeah, Solo, I think, has done a great job over the past several weeks. He's really stepped in this role. It all started with WrestleMania 40, I thought. You guys know, I mean, I thought the way he interacted with Roman in that match on night 2, really pushing that he was frustrated with Roman. He was trying to give the orders to Roman, and Roman's kind of slapping back at him. I thought that was a great way to do it. So, yeah, I think Solo he's got to be the man. As I said, he's got to be front and center now with the way this storyline is going to be. It's going to be him and Heyman probably front and center every single week, along with everyone else, like Tama Tonga, and if Fatu joins the mix, and like we said, if Jay comes back over. So, Jimmy's probably not, back in for a little while. So, yeah, I think Solo's your featured attraction now in the Bloodline. So, we'll see. Yeah, I did say earlier, I think LA Knight could benefit from going to Raw just to have a fresh scene to work with there. Because I don't, and someone asked this, I don't remember how long ago it was, maybe a couple weeks ago. If one of the questions was, could you see LA Knight being a world champion this year? I just don't know. I feel like the only scenario that happens is if maybe he beats Damian Priest, right? But I think that's probably Drew's to get back, because why? You want to get that title back to Drew because you want to have the Punk match. And I feel like Punk is not that far away now from returning. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be this month or next month, but like it's not that far. I mean, the Rumble was in January. It's almost the end of April. So I think, they definitely are going to do that match, and it's going to be for the title, I would think. Now, it doesn't need a title at this point, but I feel like you kind of have to tie the championship into that. So, yeah, but LA Knight, I just don't know. I think moving him to Raw to try to give him a fresh start somewhere there, maybe is the way you could go. Maybe if Gable eventually wins that Intercontinental Championship, like I said, you could have a Sheamus Gable, you could have LA Knight Gable, ones like that maybe to play off each other, because I just don't see a lot right now on SmackDown, unless it's the Logan Paul thing. I just don't see a lot for LA Knight, especially coming out of this match against Styles. So, and I don't mean that he's not gonna face Cody. He's not gonna take the title from Cody. So, yeah, I think LA Knight probably needs just a freshening. I mean, he's still over, right? He just needs a fresh group of opponents to work with. And maybe the Judgment Day is part of that. Like, you can tie some stuff in with the Judgment Day. So, because they're going to need people to work with. LA Knight and Dom. Have we done that already? I don't remember. But, yeah, we can do different stuff like that with LA Knight. So, yeah, so here you go. So if The Rock is pulling the strings, it's 4-on-3. So you have The Rock, you have, you've got Rock, Solo, Tama Tonga, Jacob Fatu, and then on the other side you got Roman, you got Jay, and you got Jimmy. Who else joins? I mean, look, if we're going with the day one originals, we have to go a little bit further, but could we not see a scenario at some point in the future where Sami is aligned? It's wild to think about, because Sami's the one that hit Roman, but like, what if this just strange universe unfolds where all those guys get back together? But you're right. I mean, they would need a fourth, but I think too, I don't think you're going to have The Rock in that match. To me, I feel like The Rock's only doing matches. I mean, at this point, like, I wouldn't be shocked if we see 2 more Rock matches in his career, and it's Cody and it's Roman, and that's it. That's it from Rock. But you're right. Like, and I think that's where what they can do here, they don't necessarily have to do, that 4-on-4 match, just because I don't think The Rock is, like we said, if Rock's not wrestling at SummerSlam, he's probably not wrestling again until at least the Royal Rumble. But I'm like, even then, are they going to run through Rock versus Cody and Roman at Rumble and WrestleMania 41? I don't know. I mean, I definitely could see them having the thought in their mind, The Rock is our main event guy for the next 2 WrestleManias, at WrestleMania 41 and 42. It's Cody and Roman in some order. But you know what I think about that? I'm like, Rock ain't getting any younger. I know he got out of this match this year, 45-minute tag team match, but singles match completely different. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, Sami would have a lot. Roman would need a lot of forgiveness if Sami's going to have. But, I mean, he would need forgiveness from the other guys too. So maybe there's just something special about that foursome where we get them back together, and I don't know, right? I don't know if that's the answer to the question. It's probably not a good answer, but it's a great one to think about. So, yeah. So, yeah, Uncle Howdy needs his own story. Like, this is, that character never really got a chance to probably go as far as they wanted it to go, right? Because of what happened. And so, yeah, like this is giving him that chance to sort of, not to over cliche this thing, but like finish his own story. Because I'm sure, again, there was a lot more to it with Bray Wyatt and what they had in mind for Uncle Howdy and how those two could, have a chance to unite and all this. And so, yeah, they're going to give him that chance. And like I said, I think that's fine. Like, because they have some trust there and probably some confidence that they'll make this work. So, yeah, Paul Heyman, he's got to get away from Solo. Like, he's trapped. That's my thought. That's what I said, Bearded Dragon, earlier. I said, I think Heyman's trapped, and he knows it. He knows he just has no choice here. But remember, the one thing coming out of the SmackDown we definitely need to think about moving forward, especially maybe next week, Aldis really gave a pretty stern warning to Heyman about, more than just losing has consequences. That was the line he said. And so I'm curious to see how Aldridge's going to factor into this. He's the GM, right? Or he's the authority figure on SmackDown. So, he has to play a role here, especially when you have this bloodline going rogue the way that they have without Roman. But I don't know. There was something about the way he said that. I think that we're going to get a big development next week on the draft, but I don't know exactly what the plan is there. But maybe he meant, hey, you're gonna bring Jay back. Maybe that's part of the stern warning. Bringing Jay back over. We're gonna get the crew back together. So, yeah, I don't know. Someone asked that a few minutes ago. When do I think Uncle Howdy's coming back? I mean, it's got to be soon. I feel like you can only do this QR code type stuff, the glitchy screen. You can do it for several weeks, just kind of on the different shows. But I think at some point you're like, hey, you want the payoff. And I feel like it's probably coming after Backlash, right? I think someone did ask earlier, should it come on Backlash or should it be somewhere else? I think maybe you just do that for a big reveal at the end of a TV show because, I don't know, you need it at a pay-per-view. I guess maybe do it in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I don't know if they'll do it at Backlash, but we'll find out. I mean, it's got to be soon, though, because I guess, too, for the draft or for the GM, can you draft the whole group? Can you draft the entire unit here that Uncle Howdy's going to be bringing in? So, I don't know. Look, this is a good point. I am just assuming that Fatu is a lock to join Solo, which may not be the case. But I am just assuming it because, especially now, even after tonight, I'm like, it just fits so perfectly. It fits the story exactly what they need it to be because he can be that ruthless type figure just like Solo, just like Tama Tonga. So it is it's a prediction, but to quote Paul Heyman, it may be a spoiler because it does feel like he's got to join those because that also gives you the three. If you're going to go with the Roman Usos reconnected, you got to have three on each side, even though we just brought up The Rock could be the fourth, actually pulling the strings for Solo's side. But, otherwise I just don't know how you do it, but maybe it is. I mean, maybe Jay comes back and Fatu, and I don't know, but it feels like it makes the most sense now to put Jacob Fatu with those guys. Especially the way they're pushing him now the past 2 weeks, especially. So, see, that's the thing is we mentioned that. Was it last week where Heyman specifically said, hey, if you want that dressing room back, you want the locker room back, you got to get the title back. That was by orders of the tribal chief, right? And so they want that belt. They definitely want the championship. And so by making sure Cody keeps that title, it is getting very interesting. So, and again, I think that there are a lot of combinations they can work with, and that's what I like about this is you can keep this fresh because a lot of match combinations, a lot of storyline combinations, because the history, that's where you built this history. Now you got to use it. Speaking of which, it's this is perfect. Everything has history. It's the perfect, name here for yourself. Yes, everything has history, especially the bloodline. There's so much history you can work with. So use it. Use it to your advantage. And that's what I like about Triple H too. He ties everything together. And I think it's there's so much history he can kind of blend in now where he's okay, I don't just have one person feuding with another person. There's always those secondary feuds that people have or even go a little bit further down the list. So you get these combinations that you can eventually work to like this. And so, hey, there you go. I wasn't even thinking about this. You got Seth Rollins out there too. Well, what happens if Seth is hey, get a reuniting there? Maybe they both got it out of their system, right? Roman finally got the hit on Seth Rollins. He finally got it out of his system that all those years he'd been waiting, 10 plus years or whatever, 10 years. And he finally got to hit Seth in the back. That's what he'd been waiting for. And so got it out of his system. It cost him the championship. He knows that he can't go back there. That was one of the reasons he lost to Cody is because that got in the way. His decision that he wanted to get back at Seth Rollins for what happened 10 years ago. If he would have just hit Cody with the title, he wins this thing. And he's still the champ. So you can definitely play that in. I think that's a good point. Seth's got to be doing something too out there. So I know people are well, Seth may be leaving as Becky's contract. I told you guys what I think. I don't think Becky and Drew are going anywhere. I think that they'll be renewed with their contract and they'll be back. I just can't imagine them being anywhere else. So I don't see that happening. So. All right, guys, we are going to wrap up here shortly. Like I said, if you did check out some stuff, there were, I think, a couple releases earlier in WWE, and I think it was Jinder Mahal was one of them. Xia Li was one. Zon Quinn. I didn't see any other names, but I did see that come out a little while ago. But I don't know if there have been any additional ones. Those are people that obviously were not factored into any creative plans recently. So, but yeah. Okay, by the way, too, I didn't say that. I said this earlier. This just came up, I think. Maybe it was announced. Yeah, it was announced on SmackDown. I'm sorry. I just completely looked over this in my notes. But they are having the Battle Royal to determine the champion on Raw for the women's title. So, yeah. So we'll find out. And I think Becky Lynch was actually part of that, was she not? So we'll see. We'll talk about that heading into Raw, kind of give you some thoughts on who could win that Battle Royal if they announce kind of the full deal there. It looked like there were a lot of people that were advertised, though, and maybe Becky was part of that based on what I'm reading here. So, I was trying to fly through SmackDown to get caught up. So I may have missed that with the announcement. Looks like, so I'm looking at the number: Becky, Liv Morgan, Nia Jax, Chelsea Green, Natalya, Indy Hartwell. I'm not going through everybody here, but I'm just finding some names. Yeah, see, also as also mentioned, like Xia Li was also mentioned in that promo for the Raw Women's Battle Royal, but she was released, so I'm not sure that actually means anything of who was advertised. So yeah, so that's how we'll get to the new Raw Women's Champion, or World Women's Champion. So Seth coming back as a heel, that could be a possibility too. Like I could definitely see that because yeah, like Seth, there's a lot of ways you can do this with Roman and Seth. Like there is unfinished business there, and Roman comes back as this big baby face. Like you could flip it the other way now and go back to Seth's the heel, and maybe they get back together at some point. Kind of continue that rivalry. Like there's a lot of things you could do with that for sure. So yeah, I hope Roman's not going to be too, Chris. Like I would assume that Roman's back by SummerSlam, but you guys know for me that's just an assumption. Like I can't guarantee that, but I would assume he's back by SummerSlam. But that still is, that's 4 months away. So we'll find out when Roman comes back. We know he's kind of doing the filming of some movie right now. So yeah, hopefully back sooner rather than later. But that gives you a little time to build this tension with everybody else until everybody knows what's the payoff going to be. It's going to be Roman making that triumphant return. The tribal chief back to take the throne. So we'll find out. But all right, guys, I'm going to hop off here. We got about an hour. Always enjoy the discussion. Always just a lot of great feedback, a lot of great questions. This is the most exciting thing I do each week. I love doing the videos, but this is the fun part, to actually interact with you guys in real time and talk about these shows right after the fact. So, again, hit the like button and subscribe on the way out if you don't mind. That helps the channel here. And a lot more fun stuff on the way. Again, we got Backlash coming up here pretty soon. We'll obviously have coverage of Raw. Some other videos I'm going to put out. I am doing the retro review. I'm working on Backlash 1999. So if you guys want to start checking that out, we're going to do one of those a week. I think it's kind of fun just to stroll down memory lane and do some of these older shows. And so we're naturally going to do a Backlash show this week. I'm going to try to get that done by Sunday. If not, I'll put it out on Monday. And then we're going to do another Backlash show next week. So we'll choose between Backlash 2000, 2001, I think 2002 are the other one, and 2003. The Rock versus Goldberg's another one. So I'll put the poll back out. We'll see which one wins on that one. But again, guys, I appreciate you watching. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on SmackDown on the way out. And we will talk to you again here soon at Wrestling Reaction.